Hello, Help Me Grow. Hello, Help Me Grow partners, and thank you. And welcome to our fifth and final peer learning with our ACEs Aware Collaborative. But please know that this is not the end of our support for you with ACEs Aware, as we are still offering many resources for you with Pearl's implementation and screening at your site. Dr. Dana Long will be offering trainings throughout the summer and early September on addressing adverse childhood experiences through Pearl screening and intervention. And Dr. Renee Wachtel will be offering trainings on screening for ACEs, the missing link in fostering early childhood development. Dr. Wachtel will also be offering a provider outreach session on the integration of developmental and trauma screening tools in early September. And both Drs. Wachtel and Dr. Long are available for short-term consultation with sites. And of course, Help Me Grow is available for children 0 to 5, and we, your Medical Home Project TA staff, is available to help you with questions and resource information for all children and youth with special healthcare needs. So please contact us directly for assistance and look out for information about these supplemental trainings and consultations in our newsletters, and information will also be available at the end of this session and in the chat. This session is being recorded, and before we begin, I'd like to remind you to please mute your speakers and put your name and site in the chat along with any questions you may have for us to address in our Q&A at the end. And please fill out our evaluation that will be on a link in the chat, and you'll receive a gift card for coffee on us. We are a collaborative of First 5 Alameda and Contra Costa County, UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, Center for Child and Community Health, the Medical Home Project at Stanford Children's Health, and Dr. Renee Wachtel, Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrician. I'm Lorene Perret, Program Manager with the Medical Home Project of Stanford Children's Health, where we partner with Help Me Grow of Alameda, Contra Costa, and San Mateo counties, and Child Health, Disability, and Prevention of Alameda County to promote developmental and trauma screening programs for pediatric providers. We also promote child health and development with linkages to resources throughout the counties to better serve children ages 0 to 5 and those with special healthcare needs. As we know, pediatric providers and service providers can sometimes struggle with compassion fatigue while supporting children and families through traumatic events. In today's peer learning, we will learn tips on how to maintain a healthy well-being and build emotional and mental resilience while continuing to serve children and families. In other words, helping those who help others. Today, we have Ms. Beverly Kyer, Certified Compassion Fatigue Specialist, and Dr. Mika Hiramatsu, Pediatrician of Castro Valley Pediatrics. Ms. Beverly Kyer is a speaker, educator, consultant, author, and certified compassion fatigue specialist who has devoted 16 years training human service providers and family caregivers, helping them employ self-care recovery and neuropsychological regulation strategies. By understanding the risk factors and prioritizing techniques, providers can quickly rebound and remain effective. Dr. Mika Hiramatsu graduated in genetics from the University of California at Berkeley and got her MD from the University of California, San Francisco. After completing residency at Children's Hospital Oakland, she joined Castro Valley Pediatrics. She is an assistant clinical professor at UCSF, and she's also directed the Rotacare San Leandro Free Clinic for 23 years. She has served as Northern California chapter president of the American Academy of Pediatrics and in multiple chapter and national roles with the Academy. She is currently on the executive committee of the AAP National Conference and Exhibition Planning Group, as well as the board of Children's First Medical Group. We'll begin with Dr. Renee Wachtel, Developmental Pediatrician and Clinical Professor of Pediatrics at UCSF, who works with the pediatric community to recognize the important role of pediatric providers in the screening of children and developmental delays and behavioral issues that impact the child and family. She has many years of experience working with vulnerable and at-risk populations to support optimal health outcomes. Welcome to you all, and Dr. Renee Wachtel, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Lorene. I want to welcome everyone to our peer-to-peer learning session. We appreciate the fact that you are willing to spend some time with us to explore something that might be helpful to you in your day-to-day practice. What has occurred to many of us is that it is hard as a pediatric provider to identify and work with families who have complex psychosocial issues. So we'd like to talk today about what are the challenges and how does this affect us personally, and what we can do to stay on track. So we're going to start with Dr. Hiramatsu, who's going to be talking a little bit about how this affects us and how to balance work and life in the best way to keep us functioning as best we can. So Dr. Hiramatsu, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Renee. So Dr. Wachtel and I recently had a mutual patient, and she asked me to share some perhaps familiar to you stories showing the common challenges we face in trying to avoid compassion fatigue as healthcare providers. I'm going to tell you about 3 families from my practice as a general pediatrician for the past 29 years, what I did, and a little epilogue to be followed by our expert, Ms. Kyer, who can teach us best practices. So family 1, the mother was my patient, a second-generation family. This is what happens when you've been doing this as long as me. Since age 1, the child had speech delay. Subsequent checkups were suspicious for autism, which I conveyed to the mother. But the mother chose not to work with First 5, Help Me Grow, or follow up with the regional center, as I suggested. Her boyfriend, the father of the child, told her the child was fine and not to worry. Then, at a visit for a minor illness, the mother admitted she had noticed some things, was starting to come around to a potential autism diagnosis, and we agreed to discuss it at an upcoming checkup. So I was gearing up to have a possibly tough discussion, but when she arrived that day, the mother looked upset. I asked what was going on, and she said her cousin had just been murdered the night before. The second family was a mother and her young child. This was her second marriage, and her new husband had just been arrested for alleged molestation of her teenage daughter from a previous marriage. She was distraught, and with her husband in jail, she now also had food and housing insecurity, as well as a great need for psychological support for both her and her children. Family number 3 was a happy family of 4. They were doing really well, and the parents decided to have a 3rd child. The mother got pregnant, and then COVID happened. The father was manager of a corporate banquet catering company. So guess what? He lost his job. He tried to find other employment without success, and now had a family of 5 to feed. And now the 2 kids were distance learning and needed supervision. They had to move from a 4-bedroom house to a 1-bedroom studio apartment. His frustration and feeling of helplessness led him to drinking and domestic violence. This family now faced food insecurity, housing insecurity, joblessness, domestic violence, and substance abuse. So what did I do? For the first family, I listened to the mother, my former patient, talk about her cousin. We spent a large part of that visit just doing that. I encouraged her to be with her family, and I said I would follow up with her in a few days, maybe a week, to discuss her daughter. Later that afternoon, I wrote a note to her in sympathy for the loss of her cousin. For the second family, I offered the mother counseling for her and her child, which I was very fortunate, as you all know, to find. She was also helped by the wonderful people at Find Connect. For the third family, the mother was considering employment despite being only a few weeks postpartum, since her husband had been unable to find a job. I actually tried to offer her a job at our office because a medical assistant was going on maternity leave, but could not reach her. I really worried about her. And for myself, I took a deep breath. Actually, several deep breaths. There are some days when you have patient after patient with stories like this that can wear you out. I know I don't have unlimited resources. I can't pay these families rent or their bills, cure their substance addiction, or bring back their loved ones. This inability to fix things when we are trained to fix things can be very frustrating. But I can listen to their stories, and at day's end, I try very hard to leave it all at work. I think doctors are famous for and sometimes criticized for compartmentalizing, but sometimes you just kind of have to in order to stay sane. I know I'm different than some of my colleagues in this regard because it can make for some late evenings, but I always try to finish all my phone calls and charting before leaving the office. That way, when I get home, I can be 100% there for my husband, my kids, my friends, my family, and me. When I get home, I give myself a few minutes of downtime to sit and read something or change clothes or whatever instead of rushing to the next thing. Other things, I make it a point to always eat lunch. I try to get outside in the sunshine. I listen to and play music. I take a dance exercise class. I practice mindfulness. I used to do it daily when my kids were teens, less frequently now, but it's easy to get back into. I remind myself of all the things I am grateful for. My tried and true is always indoor plumbing and hot showers. I mean, seriously, this is a great luxury that we have. I also have a small group of pediatrician girlfriends. We get together periodically and share stories just like the ones I told and support one another. So a little follow-up, family one, the autistic girl, I called the mom a few days later to check in. She was ready for a referral and said, "Thank you so much for the card. I really appreciate it." It was such a small thing that I did. And I feel like I got much more back from her remark than I gave. It filled my gratitude cup. I save all of the thank you letters I've ever received from my patients. And when I'm having a bad day, I'll sometimes.
I think she got cut off.
Uh-oh. Well, hopefully Dr. Hiramatsu will come back, but I think that that was awesome. And I know that many of us will benefit from her discussing what she does both for her families and for self-care. So we'll have her continue later when she rejoins us, and let's transition to Beverly Kyer, who's going to be talking about mitigating compassion fatigue and probably reinforcing some of the things that Dr. Hiramatsu has come up with as far as self-support.
Absolutely, I will. And do have her to cut in and continue as she wishes when she returns, because her story, her testimony was very, very valuable for us to hear. So good afternoon, everyone. So nice to meet you all. I would like y'all to unmute for just a moment, and I'm gonna put you on that gallery view. And I would like you to just take a moment and wave and shout out and greet each other with some smiles and some voice. Hello.
Everybody.
Hello.
It is
Hi,
so
everyone.
Hello.
connection for a moment. Beautiful. I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that. We have been so separated and isolated, and that's the last thing you folks need. This talk that I'm going to do for briefly with you is for the doctors, yes, but it's for everyone who works in any capacity with children's health, in any capacity. I am reminded, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself in a moment, but I'm reminded of something that I got from Dr. Bruce Perry. He's a world-renowned child trauma specialist, but he always writes these nice things and speaks. I used to follow him like a fan club member to all of us in the human services that work directly with children. He says this, and I'm directly quoting him. He says, when working with children who are struggling, suffering, it will always tax you emotionally and wear the body out. I took that as that's a culmination of a statement. The mind-body effect on you is inevitable. There was another statement made by Dr. Charles Figley. He is the founder or he's the father to me of compassion fatigue. He came up with the construct. And he said this, he says, the very qualities of caring and compassion and empathy that allow you to do this extraordinarily challenging and oftentimes grievous work put you in direct path of compassion fatigue. He says, there's no getting around it. It's simply the cost of caring. He said, but if you understand it as a predictable outcome of the work, the service, the caregiving, the life-saving measures that you take, then what is predictable is preventable. Our challenges and my mission is for us to understand the risks, the implications of doing this work so that you know that there's something that you could do to mitigate the effects of it. It's coming because we're carrying human beings, but to mitigate, to reduce the intensity of what's happening. And part of that is recognizing your vulnerability. That's a word a lot of professional people, grown people, for cultural reasons or gender reasons or firstborns in the family don't like to acknowledge because they think that that word is aligned with something called weakness. No, vulnerable is honoring the fact that you're human beings, howbeit dynamic, powerful, strong, multitasking. You're in bodies. And you have minds that can be fractured and injured. So I want you to respect that. It is wise to recognize that. So that's what brings me to it. I did begin my career as an elementary school teacher many years ago, but I went into social work because I just wanted to be more invested in doing something about the challenge, the troubles, the struggles of children with adverse experiences. I didn't want to send a note home and tell the parents every Friday that they're not participating, and I wanted to know why. When I got my degree, my first assignment was with children in pediatrics oncology. I think all of you know what that is, children with cancer and leukemia, struggling and fighting for their lives, and many of them losing it, and at the same time working very lockstep with parents who lost control of their children's care and aspirations and dreams, and working lockstep with doctors, hematologists, and oncologists, and all of the other specialties and nurses and everyone involved in that process as we struggle, battle for the lives of children, and then lost many of them. What feelings came up? I went on years later, I worked with veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder coming back from Vietnam, and I also wanted to see their children, 16 years with them. And then I worked in child welfare for a number of years, children in the foster care systems, children horribly abused in every way you could imagine. And there again, I was working lockstep with UN medical centers and clinics all over. Well, here's the thing that happened that led me to this particular work. For all my passion and energy and mission and strong sense of purpose, which each of you have, we didn't count the costs. Maybe we didn't even understand in the earlier days what it would do to us physically. You could love something and it could still take you down. You could respect something, you feel passionate mission about something, but it could still take you down. And so I suffered heart failure, not once, but twice. The second one happened because I didn't learn anything from the first one. We tend to be people that are so invested in the needs of others that you almost want to treat your own personal illnesses like it's a doggone luxury. You can't wait to get back and continue to serve, continue to help. You don't want people to have to carry any of the load without you. And that's honorable. Yet I say there's a time for recovery. It's a time for restoration. It's a time to recharge, as Dr. Mika said, for yourself. And that's imperative that you get that. So that's what brought me to teaching this subject around the country, compassion fatigue, surviving compassion fatigue, and also to understand what it is. It's important to understand what it is. It's not a good idea that you feel motivated to do self-care, but I want you to understand the science behind it. Compassion fatigue really is a syndrome that very much mirrors post-traumatic stress disorder. As a matter of fact, all the specialists would say this, that the chemical reaction in your body in the execution of your service, your caregiving to the children and their families is no different than a chemical reaction in the body of a veteran who's in Afghanistan today. Obviously, they have a different level of threat, danger to their lives on a daily basis, but the chemistry itself makes no distinction about that. It just releases, it goes out, it spreads over the body, and it could overflood the body so much with the stress hormone that it could cause toxic stress syndrome. And here we begin to get into trouble. Compassion fatigue has two clinical terms that I want you to understand. And it's important to understand that too, because I hope and I pray that all of us, and it's been a hard course, to get to the place where we could ask for help, to get to the place where we could acknowledge that we're having a hard time, to actually be okay with saying, I'm not okay. Can y'all say that out loud right now to yourself? Say, it's okay not to be okay. That's important to acknowledge that so that you could acknowledge that it's something to do. That requires specificity in what you're struggling with. And for those of us who I hope we get to the point where a place where we could help each other, support each other, it is good to know what people are struggling with. And so there's secondary trauma. This is when you get input feedback about something awful that is happening to somebody else. Obviously, in all of the cases that Dr. Mika spoke about, she got information that was upsetting, distressing, disturbing. It talked about risks to life, safety, their social aspects of their life, their losses and stuff like that. But when you get that input, you're already in a space that you're beginning to feel their trauma. She even shared their grief about the loss in the first family. But the secondary trauma impacts all of us, what we feel on behalf of others. So we hear other things out in the community. You hear about the devastation of the COVID, the losses of life, the families that couldn't connect with families, that they had to be alone with you in the hospital, and their families couldn't get there to see them in their last hours. That's horrific experience for you. And so we feel secondarily traumatized in behalf of others. The vicarious traumatization has a more, I want to say cognitive nature to it, in that you are daily exposed to crisis, to chaos in the lives of others. I know you're dealing also with the social implications, as Dr. Mika beautifully illustrated as well. But you're exposed to the suffering. You're exposed to the losses, the tragedies, the things that don't work, the setbacks. You're exposed to that. And that keeps us in a state of anticipation. Hyper alert, hyper vigilant. You always, you even hear, I worked in the hospital a lot of years, so I'm familiar, even the sounds in the hospital when the code goes off. Everything in you freezes. You don't have to be anywhere near that. That's not related maybe directly to your patient, but something happens. Somebody drops a tray in the cafeteria. Something goes off because your body is in this hyper alert startle response state. That too comes with the chemistry. So I say it's important to understand, if you're going to help or ask for help, that I am feeling horrible I'm feeling this on behalf of these experiences that I'm been made aware of, I've been reported, or it's in the case file. When you come on rounds in the morning and there's a transfer of case assignments, as soon as you see what brought them to these circumstances, you're feeling. The vicarious is because we know you're up to here with the experiences. It has become a part of our life that we're always kind of scanning, listening, anticipating, noticing, alerting. I had some issues personally with one of my husband. Years ago, we used to go to these nice parks and stuff, and we'd sit and become eating popcorn or whatever, and ice cream, and looking at people. And he'd just be enjoying watching people and having a conversation. And I'd be the one who's noticing something that don't look right to me. Don't look right to me. Two people could walk and they holding hands or holding arms, and to him that looks romantic. To me, that looked like captivity. That's what I'm talking about. So when you notice that, say that I'm struggling with this, I got to talk to somebody to help me gain some more perspective so that I don't always stay in this anticipation, because I want to emphasize that comes with the chemical. And then there's burnout. Burnout, I separate from compassion fatigue because it really talks about something that could happen to all of the US workforce, but there's people who work with stuff, make it, sell it, trade it, buy it, bargain it, design it. But there's you who work with human suffering. So the burnout really also has a lot to do with your overwhelming amount of functional tasks. You got paperwork galore, reports galore, summaries galore, prescriptions galore. You got meetings and deadlines. That functional task all by itself is enough to wipe you out. But then there's the bedside. Then there's the office visit. There's the face-to-face with the realities of this person's life in your hands. Those parents, those other family members angry at you because you're not doing what they want it done, that's different. So combine the compassion fatigue component and the burnout component is a perfect storm. It's an unholy union. Understand that you bear the weight of all of that. And then too, I cannot forget, I've been on the wards a lot. I've been in the offices a lot. There's those circumstances where families turn on you or they're threatening or the patients, those of you who work in mental illnesses, we've been under threat, physical to our safety, that will leave you with a degree or element of post-traumatic stress disorder. Once you have been threatened in that way, there's that state of anticipation too, that it just elevates your nervousness or your agitation where you feel something just beginning to escalate. Your whole body goes into flight or whatever. It goes into a constricted state, anticipating the worst until something says it's going to be okay. This is going to fuss. You're not going to hold off and hurt somebody or injure somebody or whatever the case is. All of that is part of what you're experiencing. Now, I'd be remiss if I don't combine that with what's happening in the world at large. You're not just in those hospitals, in those clinics. You're in a lot of outer world. We're dealing with COVID, we're dealing with racial climate, we're dealing with the elections that's not really over. We're dealing with the coup at the Capitol and the hate speech and this, that, and the other, the attacks on Asian groups and Muslim groups and Jewish groups and Black groups and all of that combined. You cannot separate our personal lives from our professional lives. You separate it when you're at a place where you are, when you are, but it's all part of what you carry. All of that contributes to compassion fatigue. And so I want to share with you some of the neurophysiological impacts to understand. I gave you this description. I sent you this so you have more of a reference to look at, but I'd already talked about burnout, so I'm going to move on from there. I want to just show you 3, maybe 4 areas of the neuroscience. There's actually a million more things happening in the brain and in the body. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a very basic trajectory of how the stress traverses through your mind and your body, your brain and your body. Because I want you to know where you have control to mitigate the effects that happen. When anything happens, this guy is your first responder, the amygdala. The amygdala notices, sees it, scans it, feels it, hears it coming. And its job is its real responsibility is about your survival. It is your alert, your alarm, your warning mechanism. Make a note of that. Your alert, alarm, warning mechanism. And what it does to save you, to keep you safe, is to communicate all over the brain and the body. It sends billions and billions of cells, cellular communicators all over the body. It says, watch it. Oh no, something is happening. Now, it's not a discriminator. It doesn't know the difference between surprise is your birthday or is a real threat or you are actually in Afghanistan. Its job is just to communicate. So it sends the stress hormone out instantaneously. It don't ask your permission. Don't wait for you, but it does. So the stress hormone is released into the body. Now, the other guy up here, Dr. Mika, put your thumb up because I can see you if you can see my cursor. Okay, good. It's a hippocampus. That guy is a modulator. That guy is supposed to like say, wait a minute. This is not that bad. No, this is concerning. Or maybe we should ask Patricia what to do. No, Juliana said when you're in this situation, I don't know, I'm really stuck here. I'm going to just ask Amelia. That's what it should be able to do. It should be able to rationalize, think critically. It should be able to problem solve. It should be able to have even short-term memory. But here's the thing. When you do push, and you don't stop and do the things that Dr. Mika says to just kind of decompress, bring herself down and kind of code switch to a calmer state, and you just let things stack up, pile up over on top of each other. One more thing, one more visit, one more call, one more email. You just push, then the amygdala is not spraying the chemical in a manageable way, but it's blasting it all over the brain and the body. And when it blasts it, guess what happens to the hippocampus? It gets knocked out of kilter, or Dr. Bruce Perry would say to you, it gets hijacked. And when it gets hijacked, because it's flooded with stress hormone, because you wouldn't stop, you wouldn't pause, it cannot perform its 4 primary functions, which are, here it is again, critical thinking, rational thought, short-term memory, and problem solving. You know how you got a problem on Thursday, but it comes to you on Saturday, but it wasn't available when you needed it. Half the things you cannot remember. And it doesn't mean you've lost capacity to do the job. It just means, that's why I like the word hijack. It's temporarily hijack until you do something to clear the fog and slow down that chemical so that you can access a better level of functioning. But whether the hippocampus can or not, it's still going to send a communication over to the orbital frontal cortex and tell you what to feel about it, what to think about it, and how to behave in the face of whatever is going on. Again, if the hippocampus, and this is you being regulated like Dr. Mika gets herself, then prefrontal cortex, I like to call it executive command center, says, well, you know, based on the information I got, this is how I think we should respond. I'm gonna give this a try, or this is who I'm gonna call, or I could even remember what Julie told me to do in these situations, or I'm gonna talk to Miriam. That kind of thing happens. But again, when it's flooded, because you push, you press, you don't stop, you don't pause, you don't decompress, you don't unconstrict, the flooding gets over here and it will put you in a state of almost pure reactivity versus reflective kinds of thinking. Does that make sense to you? A reflective kind of response. That's some of what happens. Yet you have control to do what you could do to slow down this chemical, help this guy back it up, think more clearly, rationally, and critically, and then give you the best possible response to what you're facing. Now, at the same exact second, split second, that and a million more things is happening in the brain, that chemical from the amygdala is going down the neurocircuitry into what we call gut reaction. That's when the body does what it's supposed to do for your survival. You see, it instantly constricts. You got this like foster tissue laying on top of the skeletal muscular structure, and it tightens up and braces for the worst case scenario because it's concerned for your survival. Automatic. So you got the stress response, and everything is challenged in all of your body systems. As a matter of fact, it loses coherence. And the longer you stay with the stress as opposed to decompressing, de-stressing, it gets worse, it gets tighter and tighter, including the fact that there's little capillaries being choked there, you see. And when capillaries are being choked and there's insufficient amount of oxygen-rich blood to systems and organs, and you know what begins to happen. They're your doctors, your medical people. You begin, what was his name? Brian Post, he said this. He says, when you hold on to distress and you don't stop and regulate yourself, you move yourself from a state of dis-ease to disease. So you must, and this is unfair, this is automatic, but this, to go back to a relaxed state where your body is back into coherence, things are functioning relatively well until you have time to do something more substantial, you must do something. You must do some technique, method, strategy to bring yourself down. Get a list from Dr. Mika because she got them laid down. That's what you do to make that change. You have that control. Erstwhile, you have these challenges. You got the professional impacts. This is some that shows up most often, but you know them, you recognize them. I do want you to pay attention to this too, because I'm concerned in my history of the numbers of doctors and nurses and medical staff, you could be respiration people, whomever is in the rooms and experiencing those things. They could look apathetic. They can look apathetic. And that might be a skill, that might be something often that is unconscious, but those often are the very people who even mistake as apathetic, like they don't care, nothing touches them. But really what that most often is in your field of work is a wall that goes up to protect you so that nothing further penetrates that wall and distresses you more than you already are. So when you see somebody looking like nothing is touching them, that's the very person to go after and say, how you doing? And don't let them say I'm fine. That's our standard professional fear. No, you're not fine. Tell you, let's talk from them. Let's take a walk from them. Let's just have a cup of tea. This is kind of say, because that situation shook me. So there's something going on. I'm here for you. That's the person you go after. I want you to also pay attention to this too. Lack of appreciation. It is well known and well documented. And I wrote about this at length. Your work is so all-consuming. All-consuming because you hold the life of others, you support the life of others, you nurture, you help, you try to rescue, prevent, whatever you're doing in behalf of the life of vulnerable children and their families. We lose touch with life. We stop doing things that formerly give us a lot of pleasure. It's not like you just said, I'm not going to do that anymore. You're zoned in. And so you don't do those things. And so you kind of get to a space where you just exist for the service, the work, and your personal responsibilities, and you're back to work. And it is important to draw those people. I so love that Dr. Mika says, you know, you got your girlfriends, your friends, stuff. You get the people to pull you out, pull you back into life, to the pleasures and the joy and the fun of life that is imperative to do. That being said, I need to ask, are there any questions? And put them in the chat box if you got a question. And somebody catch me, help me read that, Miss Lorraine or whatever, if you see anything. The personal impacts. I wanted you to know, and this comes as a surprise to a lot of people. Most people think that stress is related to our physical health only, but in truth, compassion fatigue has 6 impact areas, and they are cognitive, emotional, they're not all up here, interpersonal, spiritual, and physical. The interpersonal needs to be there because the stress will make you ruin your relationships. It will tax your relationships. Those of us who are in home, working from home, and the children and family, the partners are there, our relationships have been tested. You know, I always say it's good to have to miss people, but when you're with them all the time, you can still love them, but sometimes you don't like them too much. And so it's taxing to us. Our window of tolerance for a lot of things goes down, you see. And then the physical illnesses, you know what they are, you know what they are. But one of the things that's most concerning about compassion fatigue and our inability to remember to recharge, to put back some of the enormous amount of energies that you put out, is that it will tap into the immune system and drain it and eventually shut it down. It's well known. Therefore, we are susceptible to a lot of things. The airborne stuff on the surface, we get sick frequently. So that too needs to be attended to. Do things to boost your immune, but your immune system, but also do things to recharge yourself, repair yourself, restore yourself. Among those things is sleep. Among those things is fun. Among those things is enjoyment and activities and all kinds of right brain creativity kinds of activities. And pay attention to this. This is subtle, this is insidious, this is rather sneaky. I believe that all of us are often in a depressed state. I'm not talking about clinical depression, although you can get there if you don't address this, but a depressed state because the undercurrent of the work that you do, when things don't work well for the survival or the recovery, it keeps us with the undercurrent of sorrow. It's just there. And it's become normalized. You're so used to it. It's the work that you do. You know, it's going to be losses and challenges, but it's there. Yet I'm saying that too is causing that drain or depletion of your inner resources. So you countermand that with activities or the gratitude things, the things that you could see a blessing in spite of the things. I remember some of the children that I lost. I didn't lose them, but they died when I was in pediatrics oncology, and I happened to be at bedside with the team sometimes when some of those children made their transition. And of course I cried and I was sick and we were all trying to console each other. And then at some point, much later, a friend came to me to help and support. And part of what she uses some narrative, and she reminded me of the good things that happened in that child's life, the things we were able to do to make him laugh, to bring him fun, to make him feel close and nurtured. So she reminded me of the blessings in spite of the tragedy. See, that's a good thing to do for each other. Don't let people go home and grieve. Even if they say they're okay, I'm telling you they're not, because you're carrying human beings. So don't let that happen. But this is some of the personal impacts. Take this off and look at this, put this someplace where you can remember it as indicators and warning signs that your colleague is beginning to do too much. Too much is happening for them. You'll probably see it in them before you see it in yourself. So invite somebody to notice you. Invite somebody to be the eyes behind your head, to see you being too pressured, moving too fast, your speech, you're trying to be too much in control. It's kind of a nervous edge or a controlling nature to you. Something is shifted in your mood and your behavior, your way of being. Invite people to notice that so they can say, okay, it's time. Downshift, back it up. Let's downslide. Let's take a walk. Let's get some air. Let's get a cup of tea. Let's have a conversation. Let's go ahead and cry. Let's go have a cuss moment, whatever the case is, but stop somebody. Take that responsibility to have each other's back in those cases. Your work every day is to be aware of your dysregulated state and your regulation state. This is going to be preeminent with the work that you do. Our bodies will get out of kilter even when you think you're fine, walking okay, because you can still work like this. We can still press. We can do a multitude of things. We can manage a multitude of things. But the stress is outside of the window of tolerance. And whether you're aware of it consciously, your body's saying, what the heck? I'm tired. I'm suffering. I'm struggling here. Would you please? We don't pay attention. So know that this is there, like Charles Figley says, it's a predictable outcome of the services you do. Therefore, your work is several times a day. Stop, take a minute, 60 seconds, take 3 minutes, and do something to regulate yourself so that you can handle those same stresses, but within a window of tolerance. Even if you have to say, give me a moment to just take a walk away. I'll be right back and I'll finish this conversation, but you bring yourself down. You calm yourself, you soothe yourself, you get that input. Like I walk to one of my friends, I can walk to Miriam, I can walk to Sue, I can walk to Patricia, who I know is gonna say, it's gonna be okay. You gave it your best. And they knew that you cared. I just needed somebody to put that little insight there that kind of counterbalance the grief or my sense of failure, because I couldn't save it, I couldn't stop it. Do that for each other, but be aware that you got to work on getting here. Don't be waiting for the end of the day, and please don't be waiting for the weekend or the next holiday. Regulate throughout the day. Here's another thing that Dr. Mika said, and this is really, is a lot of data on this. Those of us who have a therapeutic community fare better. I'm talking about in our sustainability, our health, our wellness, because we are surrounded with those people that we've picked out who are our orchestra people. They're up close and personal. They are not going to let us isolate, go down. They notice if I'm drinking too much, I'm not eating right, I'm not taking time out for fun, and they come and get me. Now, here's the difference between your therapeutic community and the rest of your friends and family. Your therapeutic community are not people who need you to be okay so you can be available for their woes. They're people who just like being with you. Did you get the difference? So I want you to get a pencil and paper another time and sit down and make a list of those people. The other people are your balcony people. I love them all, but I make an appointment with myself when I'm going to talk to my niece about how difficult her day is, how sick she is of her kid. That you just kind of make that distinction, but you surround yourself with those people. And if you're honest with yourself, like I am with myself, and I'm an expert on this subject, I need my therapeutic community to save me from myself. Now, how about that? Because I know I ain't gonna stop. You call out to me, you in trouble, Anelia, Juliana, I'm coming. I don't care how tired I am, but I need my friends to say, oh no, you're not. You're gonna get that a pause, you're gonna call her, you're gonna get over there later, and this is what you're gonna do, or this is what you're gonna do when they get back. Make your list of those people and give them the assignment, give them the thing. People used to say to me, Beverly, let us know when you got some time so we can have some fun. I said, let me tell you how this is gonna work. I need you. Don't wait for me to decide I got tired, because in my mind, I never do. Come after me. My best friend just calls, he said, Beverly, is this Thursday, and this is what we're gonna do? And I start to hedge, and Ray says, no, he said, that wasn't a question. I'm telling you what we're gonna do on Thursday, what we're gonna watch on the TV. Does that make sense? Get those people and surround yourself with those people. This is powerful. Some of them could be on the job, and I really like the people on the job because y'all know, you get it. You know the mission, you know the passion, you know the extent, the scope of the challenges that you face, the struggles that you face. You don't even have to explain anything to you. I could talk to Jan, I could talk to John, and I could say, ooh, that really hit me. That knocked the wind out of me. That run. I'm having a hard time with that relationship. And they say, yeah, I get it. I get it. Ain't no long drawn out story. He said, she said, but these are the people that are your therapeutic community. Now, here's another thing. There's your accountability partners. They could be both, but accountability partners are those people on the job that you're going to say, please notice me and help me to remember to do these 3 things, Beverly's 3 R's. This is critical. And this will require for some of us a cultural push, agenda push from the way we're used to being. You must learn to release, you must learn to reboot, you must learn to recharge. Release means you push past that notion that I keep things to myself, I go inward, but you got to talk it out, cry it out, scream it out, cuss it out, journal, spoken word, whatever, but get it out. Don't let it fester. Do you know what killed 57,000 veterans after they got home from Vietnam? All that stuff down, negative content that they never talked about. That's what killed them. They were at my desk, I know personally, but you face stuff all the time. the examples, the second example in particular, Dr. Mika was anticipating the next thing that could go wrong, just kind of waiting because you already knew some possibilities of things, fear of detriment to their health if they don't make this kind of move. Say it. It's short and brief, but get it out. Don't hold it. Don't hold it. And then to reboot, do one of the technologies. There's a traditional kinds of things like yoga and meditation and stuff like that, but there's a lot of ancestral things also, like the mindfulness. I'll give you a list of those things in just a moment. But recharge, put back some of what you give out every day. Powerful to do. Your sleep is a recharge, the most restorative time in your body. Music, dance, fun, play, games, mysteries, reading stupid books. You'll read some real serious stuff all the time, but get something stupid and just laugh about it. You know, I like my sci-fi and I like my humorous stuff like that. Watch some stupid stand-up comedy. I don't care if they're cussing anymore. Make me laugh. Recharge daily. That's basically at the end of the day. But the release and the reboot, do it on a job. Take a pause for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, several times a day, and do those 3 pieces. This mitigates the effect of the stress that you work under. Now, your accountability partners, make a list of those people too. Again, these are people who are they just get what you do. I'll tell you the difference. My sister-in-law is one of my best friends, and she's very, very honest and very candid, professional woman. And she said to me, I don't know why you do that job anyway, because you could be someplace making money. That's the way she felt about the pressure I was working under. And that was came from a place of love, but she's obviously not the one that I could discuss work challenges with. Does that make sense? Sometimes our families and friends that we tend to draw close to us, they don't get what we do, why we do. They don't understand the mission or the scope, and maybe it's too hard for them to hear the things that you're exposed to. The accountability partners are most often, again, the people you work with, your peers. It doesn't require a lot of discussion. I could look at one of you that I work coming down the hall and I know something's wrong. I could hear the pressure in your speech or the lack thereof and know something is wrong. I can see the loss of color or too much color in your face and I know something is wrong, or I heard the situation and you're going to try to tell me you're fine. And I'm going to say, no, you're not. Get your people and make an agreement on how you're going to help, support, notice each other so you could just help them circumvent and say, no, you've done enough for right now. Let's just stop for a moment. Make that decision, make that choice, but pick those people, accountability partners, and your therapeutic community. There's a metaphor that I like, and I hope I have time to share this metaphor. Stop me if I don't. Yell at me, somebody. We okay? Time-wise? Okay. My dear friend, Judy Frizzell designed this metaphor. You know, you talk about when you're on a plane and there's something wrong with the cabin pressure and these masks come down that you're supposed to put your mask on first and then put on the other person, whether they're children or whomever they are. And I thought about that and I kind of laughed in a kind of, I don't know what you want to call that, weird way, because I said, I wonder how many of us who are helpers by nature would really take care of ourselves first and then do the other, and I doubt that. I know that's probably my case. But Trudy came up with this better metaphor, and it was the metaphor of the diver. Now, the diver, I want you to imagine it as you, and the water that it dives into is the work you face every day. And that gauge, you see, before they go down into the water to start their day, start to dive, they check that gauge, they check the valve, they check and make sure that that tank is completely full, that has enough stuff in it. It checks it before. And so in other words, you condition yourself in a day. Some of us do meditation first thing in the morning, or prayer, some affirmations first thing in the morning, or exercise or walk before we even start the day. But prepare yourself before, make sure everything is okay. And then you make the dive. But this is something else the diver does. Throughout the dive, it stops periodically and checks the gauge and the valves, making sure that there's going to be enough in that tank to get them back to survival at the end of the day. They do that all the time throughout. And when they finish the day, when they end the dive, they check that tank and fill it up for the next day, make sure the valve, make sure the gauges are working perfectly for the next day. They do that all the time. And here's another thing that the diver never, ever does. Never does. It never goes down alone. It always goes down with a partner, a peer, an accountability partner. Always does that so that you can check each other. get over that or work through that pride thing that allows some of us to believe that I could do this on my own. I could do this on my own. I went to study in Canada with Dr. Anna Baranowski, the Traumatology Institute director. She trains people and dispatches them to tsunamis and mudslides and earthquakes, but she always says, you don't do this alone. You don't do this in solo. You go with someone, you go with your source, you go with your strange, your strength, Vera. That's what you do. So I wanted to share that metaphor with you. All in that, you have the power to work on your own wellness. And the first line of defense for that power is to be in a place where you could be open and candid about your challenge and your struggle. I so admire Dr. Mika. She held nothing back to say that. And we think no less. I admire her. I am proud. I want to model her practices for self-care. Ask for help. Receive help if somebody offers it to you. Stop saying, I'm fine, I'm okay, I got this. That is so not realistic, and that's not helpful. You may think you can, but in the long run, see, our body remembers everything and it keeps us going, even if you're not aware of it, it's being under assault. Our minds are under assault, as he says, Bruce Perry says, it will tax you emotionally and wear your body out. He didn't say it might, he says it will. Do it. So take that initiative to ask for help, receive help, and work on your service, work to yourself, your caring and your compassion to yourself. Make that a point of your life. And I think that's all I wanted to say, not to save time. I just wanted you to know that I gave you some resources, how to get some additional help. I do a broadcast every Monday, it's free. And you could type in and look at some of those videos. I talked about some of everything. I even had a special thing, Gift to the Givers, around the holidays. And I was talking to medical providers, doctors and nurses in particular, and the rest of the people who work in the medical facility as well. But I wanted to just really, really acknowledge you. But there's things about anxiety, about pressure or depression or overeating or over drinking or loss of sleep or the loss of contact, all the issues that concern us. And those are just free. You can look at those videos when you have a chance. There's also a Facebook group. You can get on there and kind of talk sometimes and ask some additional questions. Just wanted you to have that, to know that that was available. Remember the release, remember the reboot, remember the recharge. Some of those additional recharge activities are things like, excuse me one second. The meditation piece is important. Exercises like Tai Chi and Qigong, playing with games, time with friends, getting enough sleep, the mindfulness exercise, arts and crafts. Get into your right brain. We're very logical people, left brain hemisphere, which is so important. Your logic, your rationalizations, being reasonable and oral expressive language, that's important. But that keeps us kind of in a place of trying to make sense out of sometimes what don't make no sense, or being logical about things that are just not logical. Matter of fact, it's outside of the realm of the human expectation of what happens to children. Get that. But get into the right brain as much as you can, frequently, for the fun, for the play, for the activities, for the creativity, for the music listening, the artistic kinds of things. Do that because incidentally, y'all probably already know this, that releases a whole different chemistry. Your serotonin, your dopamine, your endorphins, that's the stuff that makes you say, oh, there's possibilities. When you hit the wall, you say, well, what's the next best thing? And you can get to that gratitude, that gratitude. And it's a gratitude that I'm feeling for you right now for doing what you do. My final thing to you is to say, treat yourself as a gift. Your gift is what you give to others. And many people wouldn't touch our children or do this work with a 10-foot pole, but you're there. So nurture and protect and preserve the gift that you are. And thank you for this time with you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kyer and Dr. Hiramatsu, for just sharing your stories and just also reminding us of how to just get back to taking care of ourselves and giving us all of these tools that a lot of us knew about, but just maybe have forgotten about, and just how to just reboot, release, and recharge. And just thank you so much. And I also wanted to just share with you all that we have additional resources that are available for all of our providers. For ACEs aware and PEARL screening and trauma-informed care listed here. In addition to that, I also included information in the chat. So please definitely take notice of what's in the chat and definitely fill out the evaluation for the free Starbucks gift card. And then we have an upcoming training that's happening June 22nd. That is our Addressing Adverse Childhood Experiences through Pearl Screening and Intervention with Dr. Dana Long and Artanisha Jackson. So please register for that, June 22nd from 11 a.m. to 12:30. And again, we also have supplemental trainings available with both Drs. Long and Dr. Wachtel for your ACEs, Pearls implementation and or screening. So any support that you need around that, we're definitely available. And thank you so much. And we look forward to talking with you and connecting with you on next steps for Pearls implementation and screening. And thanks to everyone. And we will have this recording available. So we'll be sharing that and just let us know if you need it.
And
Thanks.
Beverly, will you be able to provide us with the slides so that we've had some requests?
Oh, yeah, I sent it the other day, but I will resend it I sent it the other day.
Okay, but you're okay with us providing it to?
Oh, I want everybody to have it. Plus on the others, the last slide, which I didn't show you, there's a powerful, powerful resource from the Restorative Practices Alliance. These are doctors worldwide, or technicians, or treatment healers, have all kinds of ancestral and traditional technologies for your wellness. Wonderful, powerful tool. And so that's on that slide. And so tell me, somebody send me an email, two of you, and I will enter that slide into it so you can give it to everybody.
Okay.
That would be just great, because I think, it's one thing to go onto a website or something and explore that and get additional resources. But I think that many of the things that you talked about today are powerful. And so being able to revisit your slides and rethink about what you said, I think will be quite helpful to the people who are participating. And so I wanted to thank you and Dr. Hiramatsu for really broadening the conversation about how the work that we do is stressful, even if we're not aware of how stressful it is, and how,
Especially if you're not aware. It's so insidious.
right, and how we can both prevent the undue stress by doing things even before, in the morning before we go to work, and then taking some of these actions during the workday, and then the other supports like the other groups and helpers. So I think that all of us are going to benefit from not just listening to hear you speak, but also to sort of reviewing the information and seeing how we can incorporate that into how we live day to day. And I think that Dr. Hiramatsu has given us some examples of how she is able to be handling these stresses every day in a career of 20-something years and ongoing. And so even, especially for maybe some of the younger physicians who are just sort of getting into it, we need longevity of all of our providers. And we need people to be functioning at their best. And so incorporating some of the things that you recommended, I think will help us all do our best and be our best, right?
Yes. It was
Absolutely.
my honor to work with you, Dr. Mika, also to team with you. Excellent examples.
Yes. And I just want to mention one more time before we all start to sign off to please, please, please fill out the evaluation before you go, just to let us know how we're doing and what we can do better and how we can continue to support you all. And thank you all so much. Thank you, Beverly Kyer. Thank you, Mika. Thank you for the entire team for joining us today. And we hope that you got something out of this. I certainly did. And we'll see you all next time.
Y'all unmute yourself and say good afternoon to everybody.
Bye. Good afternoon.
Bye.
Good afternoon.
Bye-bye. Good afternoon. Bye. Thank you.
Juliana.
Bye-bye.
Sue.
Thank you.